Yes, it's true. For only $2.95 a minute, I will leave you breathless.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to my video on advanced Janna tips. Due to her simple kit and simple abilities, Janna is infamously known for being a no-skill champion. However, mastering all the little things about her playstyle can really help you outperform other Jannas and help you climb to a level you haven't been at before, just knowing these simple tricks. Now, without spending too much time in the intro, let's get into it. Let's start by talking about Janna's Q, Howling Gale. Howling Gale, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated abilities in the entire game. One Howling Gale that's like fully charged can completely change the game. So many times I have seen Janna players use their Q way too early, causing them to either miss their target or have a much less devastating effect than it would have had if they charged it for a little longer. Janna's Q is probably the hardest ability in her kit to use effectively. This is because there's so many different ways to use it. The Howling Gale requires the player to actually know where the enemies are going to be after a little bit of time instead of where they are right now. So we all know the generic just throw the Q at them and release it right away to knock them up so you can escape, or something similar like that. Let's go over the other ones. The first one we're going to talk about is the defensive backwards Howling Gale. This is one not many Janna players actually know about. To do this method effectively, you have to use the Howling Gale in the direction you're actually running, instead of the direction where the person chasing you is coming from. Now we all know that Janna's Q knocks up for longer, travels further, and does more damage if you charge it for longer. Since you're not releasing your Howling Gale right away to knock this person who's chasing you up, it actually charges for longer, thus allowing you to have a more reliable escape due to the longer duration knockup. Of course, this is not a staple used in all situations method, so you would need to know as a Janna player which ones are the situations where you would use this method versus the instant Janna Q towards the enemy. But without further ado, let's look at this example from an actual Janna player. As you saw from that clip, the Janna allowed herself to escape much more freely than she would have if she threw an instant Q at the Twitch. Now let's not forget how useful the actual instant Q can be. To do this, we're going to look at an example where if I did not use an instant Q, I would end up possibly causing my team to be engaged on or even dying. Now the next type of Howling Gale we're going to talk about is the one from Fog of War that is used offensively to hit as many people as you possibly can. Doing this can actually cause your team to have a really good engage to follow up on, or even you to walk in, flash ult the enemy team into yours, or something similar like that. Preparing your Q in the Fog of War allows you to have this element of surprise, since the enemy team does not know where your Q is actually coming from or that it's even being charged up in the first place. Some of the best Howling Gales I've ever seen were actually from the Fog of War, since these did not allow the enemy team to have enough time to react to it. Now as an example for this clip, we're going to look at one from the same Janna player from the first clip using this method in the Baron Pit to prepare for an amazing engage so her team could pick up some kills. Pretty cool, right? Now moving on to the next mistake I see a lot of Janna players doing is the usage of their W. Now of course it's super easy for anyone to use their W. It's an on-click slow and everyone's tempted to use it on any enemy they're chasing. Although it is super tempting to use this W slow on any enemy you see, most of these players forget that the passive effect can be much more useful than the active effect in most situations. Not losing that passive effect to the active effect actually ensures you to have much more movement speed, allowing for a speedy escape or even just tilting the enemy team from the fact that they can never kill you. So I guess the thing to take away from this is just do not forget about that passive effect. Moving on, Janna's E, Eye of the Storm. This one applies more to the laning phase, however. So many Jannas just sit in the back and just shield their AD carries and allow them to do more damage to the enemies by increasing their attack damage and not taking any retaliation damage from the enemy. So many AD carry players, however, do not use this attack damage bonus or the shield to actually trade with the enemy. In these situations, I would advise so many Janna players to just use the E on themselves and auto-attack the enemy. This not only allows you to poke the enemy since your AD carry doesn't want to, this allows your AD carry to play much better as well because he sees you being proactive and putting some pressure on the enemy team so he can farm correctly. That pressure you're applying can make the difference between your AD carry or their AD carry being ahead in CS. Now finally, Janna's ult, Monsoon. One of the most underrated parts about this ability is the healing. So many Janna players use just the knock-up, either knock the enemy team into their team or use the knock-up to save their teammates by knocking the enemy team back. So many Jannas do not realize that this has a healing effect that can do just the same thing in regards to saving their teammates. So to look at what I'm talking about, we're going to look at a Janna use her ult to heal a Lucian, allowing the Lucian to come back with a double kill instead of being caught out. Note that in this clip, not a single person gets knocked away. Now this does not mean that you're just going to go out from here and just use your heal and not your actual knockback, because the main thing about Janna is she is meant to peel. So many games can be won just by sitting right beside your AD carry and making sure they don't die. This means that you have to use all your abilities to their maximum potential so that your AD carry doesn't die and puts out more damage than the enemy AD carry. Because your AD carry alone cannot always 1v5, but with you, most AD carries can. Now before I end the video, I'm going to give you the number one tip that will actually help you climb no matter what. And this is literally do not flame. So many games in League of Legends are won or lost because either you or the enemy team is tilted. If it's your team, you're gonna lose 90% of the time. If it's the enemy team, you're gonna win, because it is almost impossible to come back when your team just hates each other and just wants to lose, and they're playing like it because they're tilted from either what your team is saying or what the enemy team is saying. So many games in League of Legends are literally emotional battles, and you gotta win this along with the actual battle itself. Flaming your teammates is gonna make games so much harder. I know you probably heard this a million times before, and so many other guides, everyone says it, don't flame, it's bad, don't be toxic, and all these like crazy things about mindset, but I'm telling you it's true. When I was flaming people, I'm literally losing so many more games. Janna literally depends on her teammates being able to do some damage and being able to carry while she just helps them through her supporting abilities, through her peel, through her shields, and through her healing, and all those other crazy things she does. But without her team, Janna can't do anything. So the main thing to know as Janna is literally do not flame in any situation. You gotta be that one player on the team that's trying to keep everyone in a good emotional state, and not that player who's telling everyone they're a bunch of boosted apes who wet their beds every night and that you're gonna rape their mothers. No, that is not how you're gonna win League of Legends games, especially if you're playing a champion like Janna that literally depends on her team being in a good emotional state and depends on her team playing well. I can guarantee that there's players out there that just because they're toxic, they're holding themselves back. Literally, if they weren't toxic with the exact same gameplay, they'd probably be like Silver 1 instead of Bronze 1, or even like Diamond 5 instead of Plat 3. Literally differences that big can be made just from being a positive player instead of a toxic player. Anyways, this video is supposed to be about advanced Janna tricks, and I've already gone through all those, so I'll just end the video right here. I hope you guys actually learned something, and if you know any tips or tricks on Janna that I did not mention, please let us know down in the comments so we can learn as well. May the rank gods be with you and the winds blow ever in your favor. Peace out.